Alright, lads and ladies, after 2 subsequent playthroughs of God of War 2018, back to back within a month, one on Give Me a Challenge Plus, one on Give Me God of War Plus, I have to talk about this game and review it before Ragnarok finally gets here, and inevitably takes Game of the Year, as I think it should. So, what are my thoughts on God of War 2018? What is the good, the bad, and the ugly of this game? Is it the masterpiece everyone praised it to be? Is it the flawless 10 out of 10 everyone likes to say it is? Well, I can't answer that yet because then there's not much point of a video. So, let's just go ahead and roll right into the good parts of this game, because we're going to go through the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, starting with the good, the visuals of this game are fantastic. You look at God of War Ragnarok and you think, this doesn't look that different from 2018, and that's because 2018 is already so visually impressive. From what we can see, I'm recording this on the day the Ragnarok metascores and everything went up. From what we can see, the main difference in the visuals of them is A, lighting, B, texture quality. Everything else is more or less the same. The lighting is significantly better in Ragnarok, and the texture quality is significantly improved because it's the PS5, of course it is. But this game looks phenomenal already. It is one of the most consistently great looking games ever. So, it's no surprise that Ragnarok doesn't look that much better, but that's just because this game is already one of the best looking of the PS4. Next up is going to be the voice acting, or just the acting in general. The acting of God of War 2018 is some of the best I've seen in video games. Now, that on occasion you will hear something and think, is that actually the best take they had? But for the most part, it's never distracting, right? Sometimes you'll have that moment, or you'll think that sounded a little off, but you'll never hear something and it'll be distracting. It's one thing to have an iffy read, but you can just keep going. It's something to make you dwell on. There's no possible way that's the best take. There's a difference between that, and I think that Ragnarok on the brain, that God of War 2018 does a good enough job of having excellent acting all throughout, minus a couple line reads, usually from Atreus, sometimes from even Kratos. There's nothing against the actors at all. It's just sometimes the direction of a line may not be that good, or it could just be editing that kind of leaves it to sound kind of weird, or just wherever it's placed in gameplay. It's not a thing against the actors. It's more or less just, this line sounded a little iffy in this certain situation. Next good thing is, of course, the story of God of War 2018. The story is all absolutely fantastic here. It's very cohesive, and everything is very logical and digestible. You never really feel like you jumped a shark or two going through God of War 2018's narrative. There is a part where it does kind of feel like that, but I'll save that part for the bad. For the most part, God of War 2018 is very logical and digestible. It never feels, like I said, it never feels like we jumped a shark, or like I missed something, or like it feels like something should be here. It never really gets to that point. It's very good, but I would say the characters probably carry it. The story isn't anything new or special or groundbreaking. It's the same thing you've seen 100,000 times by this point, but the characters are really good. The new Kratos, Atreus, everybody like that. They're the main two that matter. Everybody else are just kind of side characters in this story, and even Atreus feels like a side character in Kratos' story. But for the most part, the story and characters really drive this home. As for the levels of the game, they're all good except for one, which I'll save for the bad. Niflheim, despite it being annoying, is a pretty good level. A maze that constantly changes, is there for grinding. It's annoying, but you can't deny that it's effective, and that it's not absolutely horrible the first few times you're in there. Midgard is the hub area. This is where you spend like 75% of the game, and it's really good, I would say. They really fleshed out everything, where you're finding Konungsgard, you're finding the place in the top right with the Thor statue. You're going through the mines, you're checking all the shores, you're going through the different realm towers, you're just exploring everything you can find. God of War 2018 does a really good job of making semi-open world feel just as good as open world in this case. Midgard, if I accidentally call it Midgard a couple times, forgive me. I play Final Fantasy VII. But Midgard definitely feels very fleshed out, and like it's really well done. It's one of the best not open worlds I've seen in a while. Alfheim is basically just a smaller version of Midgard. It's got a couple little detours you can do, but for the most part, this is just here to be the pretty fantasy world of this game, and it succeeds in that. When you first step out and you see the sky in like a reddish dark look, because the dark elves have got the control of the light, it's really a wow moment. It looks so good. But Alfheim, there's not much to say. Good levels for when you're going underground, and when you're just rowing around, it looks really good. It's just, but again, it is just your typical fantasy world that this game kind of felt like it had to have, since Vanaheim and stuff isn't in this game. So, as for Alfheim, it's good, but you know, it's just, it feels like it's just a detour. You know what I mean? Like this is the world that kind of just feels like a detour for the sake of having a detour to another realm, I think. As for Helheim, it's simple, but it's effective. Frozen Wasteland, you know. Although there is one bad part with Helheim, which again, we'll save for the bad. Overall, the levels are good and feel well thought out, but there are a couple, like, each one has its own little, like, problem. Helheim is that it's all kind of samey. Niflheim is that it's annoying. Alfheim is that it feels kind of tacked on. Like, hey, we need to get you to a new realm stat. And Midgard is fantastic. So, every one of them all kind of has their catch except Midgard, I would say. But, yeah. As for good, I guess we can say the combat is fine, but parts of it aren't. The axe is great, the bare hands are really good, and the blades we'll save for later. But overall, I think the combat is fine, it's serviceable. Would I say this combat is better than like God of War 3's? No, I wouldn't. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I 100% think that God of War 3 has better combat than this game. And I don't think that's even close. I don't think it's even a debate. The combat of this game, again, it's serviceable, it's fine, but you do really get tired of doing the same 3-hit combo over and over and over again. Yeah, you can do throws, and yeah, you can do your hold, and you can do your takedowns or whatever, but it doesn't really move beyond doing the same 4 hits over and over again. It really doesn't. And then when you get really good armor, it just more or less devolves into runic attack spam. So, again, it's serviceable, it's fine, but this is the area I would really like to see Ragnarok do the most improvement. Okay, and now we're moving into the bad of the game. So the bad part of the story I mentioned, where it really feels like we missed something, is Atreus like suddenly flexing his godhood a whole lot. I feel like this is the most annoying, cringe way you could have possibly moved into it. What you should have done, like, you should have had him work into it, like slightly start to say things that are, you know, a little bit sus. I hate to use the term sus, but say things that are a little bit sus and then work his way into it, instead of just jumping from kid we all like to completely insufferable. I was almost tempted to mute the TV a couple times because I was just getting so sick of listening to him. Again, it's nothing against the actor, right? It's just, I think this is a writing thing, of course. The actor does everything just fine, but from a writing standpoint, I really think Atreus could have used, like, another couple hours of gameplay to really get that arrogance about him, instead of just zipping straight to being intolerable. That's a nitpick, some would say, but it really did annoy me and get under my skin. So I figured I'd bring it up for the bad. And for the bad, the one realm I didn't mention, Muspelheim is garbage. You may as well be going through the trials through a series of porta potties. It literally means nothing. And this has nothing to do with the trials. I will say the trials kind of felt like they were scrambling to have some kind of post-game content that wasn't the Valkyries, but even still, the trials were fine. The problem is, Muspelheim doesn't matter. You may as well be undergoing these trials in a series of porta potties because it literally means nothing. This is just an empty area for you to zip through every now and then, say, oh, what's that in the distance? An ash cloud. The same thing I can see literally everywhere else. Riveting scenery. It really does mean nothing at all. I would like to see Muspelheim be something in Ragnarok instead of just this, where it's like 5 or 6 rooms and a couple hallways that all look the same and all serve the same non-existent purpose. I would really like to see it actually be something. And now for the one weapon I didn't mention, the Blades of Chaos. 99% of the time, the Blades of Chaos are useless unless you're in Helheim. The only time I ever really got any use out of the Blades of Chaos on either of my most recent runs was where I literally could not use the axe. When the axe was completely useless and I had to use either the blades or my fists, and even sometimes I still opted for the fists because it's faster. The Blades of Chaos just don't do that much damage, they don't really do that much more stun, and jury's out on if the range is really that much better because you have so many throw combos with the axe. I would 100% think that the blades were mostly something just to get you, right? To make you think, oh, this is crazy. And from what we've seen of the Ragnarok gameplay and how the reviewers have talked about it so far, the way we use the blades is vastly different, and that's a fantastic thing, but just because it's going to be better in the next game doesn't mean I can give it a pass here, because the blades are still not good here. They are almost completely useless. I never once felt like I needed to use them for literally anything outside of Helheim. The axe can do literally whatever you need, and against the Valkyries, just forget it. There's no point in even touching them. I use them like to start off with 2 runic attacks at the start, just to chunk a bit of health off and give me God of War. But beyond that, the blades literally got no use from me. None at all. They're useless. They don't do anything. The range is too short for them. And again, that's why the axe is better anyways, because you can throw it. The blades are completely malignant and useless in God of War 2018. I will not be hearing any counter arguments on this. The axe is better in every single way, and you can make the argument that fists are better because you can kill enemies more efficiently with them. And now for another section of the bad. This is another part of the story, I guess, and I think I mentioned this a second ago with Helheim. The second time you go to Helheim is nothing but padding, dude. It's literally nothing but padding. Like, and you could say, oh, but this is how, Kratos fusses at Atreus for being aggravating. Or, this is how Atreus starts to figure out who Kratos once was. This is how he figure out Freya's Baldur's mother. And here's the thing with Kratos figuring out who Atreus is, or Atreus figuring out who Kratos is, and him yelling at Kratos for being aggravating, and everything involved. One, I want to say for the whole Freya thing, I figured it out by this point. The second she said that she had a son, I said, well, there you go. And it's also because I kind of knew a bit about Norse mythology and how the arrows that Sindri gave Atreus were mistletoe arrows, and when she made everything swear to not harm Baldur, the mistletoe was deemed to be too young to swear the oath, so it didn't do it. I kind of knew that by this point, but even still, I feel like with that I probably would have known, hey, this is most likely Baldur's mother. I think I had already pieced that together a dozen times. Plus, Mimir not being able to say something about Baldur, this felt too obvious to me. Like they were basically beating you over the head the whole time that Freya was Baldur's mother. And when it finally got revealed, it really didn't do much for me. And again, people are going to say, well, without this, how would Kratos and them know? And how would Atreus figure out what Kratos is? Don't care. The writer should create a better scenario where this happens, because this is nothing but padding. This entire section, this entire detour, literally feels like nothing but padding, right up until when you find that hidden chamber of Odin. At that point, it feels necessary again. But until then, it literally just feels like padding. And the last thing in the bad is Baldur doesn't really feel like a fleshed out villain. I think they killed Baldur a bit prematurely in this game. Baldur is on screen for a couple times, and if it's not a boss fight, it's fleeting. He's there for 0.2 seconds and then poof, he's gone again. Straight up. Baldur really doesn't do much in this game, and by the time you're at the very end of the game, you're thinking, okay, hold on. He's starting to become, oh, he's dead. He's starting to become a character, and then he's dead. Straight up. The end of the game, like pretty much starting from when Atreus starts acting the way he does all the way through the end, is when the game really starts to feel like, okay, come on, we gotta get to the game, we gotta get to the end of the game, come on, we got a story to wrap up, let's go, back to Helheim, we gotta go, okay. Like, it's when the game really starts to feel like it's losing track of what it's doing, and again, I think killing Baldur was a problem, but I can get behind it, okay? Baldur has to walk as a villain so Freya can run, and I guess I'm okay with that. But it is a little annoying how Baldur is treated like an afterthought in this entire game. Okay, and now for the ugly of God of War 2018. First off is going to be enemy variety. Everyone knows this is an issue. God of War 2018 has about 6 or 7 different enemy types. You have a small light enemy, or just a small enemy. You have a medium-sized enemy. You have a large enemy. And then you have elves and revenants and nightmares for your main enemy types. That's about 7 different enemy types, and each one of them has a slight little variance on it. You can say that the Draugrs are different from the Hell Raiders or from the Poison guys. It's a stretch, right? They're all basically the same thing. You approach most of them the same. So there's about 6 or 7 different enemy types, and it gets really tedious fighting them. Like, by the time I would say by the time you go and cut off Mimir's head, you're probably bored of fighting them by now. And you have enemies such as like wolfmen or just wolves, but they show up so rarely. It doesn't even matter. And that's another problem. Instead of like sprinkling in some of the few actual different enemies that you have, you just keep putting more and more and more and more and more of these same 2 or 3 enemy types. Instead of having more wolfmen in there or more Taza worms in there, stuff like that, there's just nothing. So they just keep force feeding you the same 3 enemy types over and over again. And for your mini bosses, you have travelers, which are harder than every other boss in the game except the Valkyries. You have ogres, which are more or less used to just stun and then kill everything else in the room with their takedown animation. Those are basically your mini bosses. And then for your bosses, you basically fight the same ancient and ogre or a troll over and over again. You fight them a dozen times each, and the only one that's really any different is the Helheim Bridge Keeper. I remember getting to Tyr's Temple and looking at the 2 troll guards that hold the chain before you flip it, and I'm thinking, are you serious? You're gonna make me fight them again? There's no way. There's no way they're about to do it, and they didn't, thank God. But the problem is that you fight them so often. You just fight them every 2 seconds, and it's so tiring. The only bosses that are really any different is the dragon, which I would say isn't even a very well-made boss. The Valkyries, which all kind of share the same base moveset, and then Sigrun is just cobbled together from the rest of them. Magni and Modi, which is without a doubt probably the best boss in the game, even though they are a little annoying. You know, they're fine. They're balanced-ish on some difficulties. Baldur's fun, but you get kind of sick of fighting him, and at the very end, he's just a little bit tiring, you know? And it gets to the point where they kind of pull an Elden Ring, where they're like, okay, we don't really know how to make this boss you fought before harder, so here's a phase where he's just got a bunch of trash mobs stuck in here with him. It's annoying, but it's not too distracting. But the bosses and enemies of this game are really bad. Compare this to, say, a game like Final Fantasy VII Remake, where there are so many different enemy types, and mini-bosses, and full-on bosses that are all unique, and you can't even keep track of the amount of enemies in FF7 Remake. And this is a shorter game than this is, I believe. Maybe it clocks in around the same, but you get the point. You know, like the enemy variety in this game is so much better compared to God of War 2018. And I've heard this is because of budget and everything, but even still, you could have sprinkled in the few extra enemies that you had more often into the game, instead of just, oh, here's one wolfman with a bunch of raiders, okay, and now you won't see another wolfman again for about 5 or 6 hours. You know, they could have sprinkled them in more. And something else in the ugly is how higher difficulties affect the difficulty. So rather than adding different mechanics or different ways to approach combat in the higher difficulties, instead of doing something interesting like that, Santa Monica Studios said, okay, well, what if every enemy was a damage sponge that would take like a few dozen swings to kill, it feels like. Oh, and also they can 2 or 3 shot you, and they have super armor to power through everything. So for example, one thing I noticed was with the light fire draugrs. If they do the thing that they activate themselves to explode when you touch them, if you throw the axe, you deactivate them, and you can go punish. The bad part is every single enemy is so chock full of super armor and everything that you deactivate them, you go to hit them, it doesn't matter, they have super armor, they're going to do it again anyways. Guess what? You're at point blank range, so because you're hitting them, even though you're punishing for an opening that you earned on an enemy, doesn't matter, you're punished for playing the game correctly. Because guess what? You hit them, they had super armor, they activated again, you took the damage. 3 other guys with this same ability has already passed on to you, suddenly, you're dead, right? And this is mostly an issue with the regular enemies. The bosses are a bit, I don't want to say more balanced, it's just that the bosses in general are more well made, so it's easier to not get hit by their attacks. Now, all the Valkyries do well. Sigrun, I feel like, is clearly on Give Me God of War Plus. Clearly meant for the Zeus set, because when I did it, I had max everything except strength. I had 250 strength, everything else was max, and I would be so perfect for so long and didn't have the damage to kill her. Sigrun is obviously meant for the Zeus set. Basically, throw caution to the wind, whatever, except that you're going to die in one hit anyway, and then fight Sigrun as best you can, and not get hit, and just kill her before she can do anything. So, difficulty, I feel like, is a huge misstep in this. I really hope it's more well-balanced than Ragnarok, and that instead of just making enemies spongier, or hit harder, or giving them super armor, they actually add more mechanics in the higher difficulties. I would very much like to see that. Also, a new weapon would be good. But, yeah. Settling on a score for God of War 2018, I'm going to be giving this game a generous 8 out of 10. On the right day, I can be talked down to a 7.5, I think. But the game does a lot of things really well, even though I spent a long time ranting about the things I didn't like, because while the game does, I would say, about 80% of everything very well, The 20% that it doesn't do well really just irks me. There's a lot of issues with it, but again, I think overall it's fine. So I'm going to give this game an 8 out of 10. Again, I could be talked down to a 7.5, I think. But, yeah. Anyways, I've been rambling for quite some time now. Let me know what you think about God of War 2018. Am I wrong? Is this the flawless 10 out of 10 masterpiece that everybody says it is? Am I just incorrect? And I want to make it clear, I did beat this on Give Me God of War. People are going to say, oh, he's ranting about Super Armor. He probably just died 100,000 times and then couldn't beat it and he's ranting about it. No, I beat this game on Give Me God of War. I did it, okay? I managed to get through it. So I'm talking from experience here. But again, am I wrong? Am I right? Do you think I'm lowballing or I'm overshooting this score and it's way lower? Let me know. I think there's a lot of hate that this game can get sometimes, but I also think there's a bit too much praise this game gets. So try to find a balance here. But yeah. Thanks for watching. Make sure you check out Worthless Rage's music. They do my outro, and if you like what you hear, I'm sure they got something else over there. I'll have their links in the description below. But yeah, I'm gonna finally get out of here. I cannot wait for God of War Ragnarok, and I will be doing a review when that drops, when I finish it and platinum it anyway. Maybe even after I do a New Game Plus on Give Me God of War. But yeah, that's gonna do it. Thanks for watching. My name is Carmen, but I go by Ellism on YouTube, and that's gonna do it. Y'all take it easy.